Hi, Else here, and this is part 2 of solving problems using the accounting equation. In our first video, we solved questions 1 and 2, but in this video, we're going to do more complicated questions, ones you might see on a test or final exam. As I pointed out in the last video, always read the question once to get the general idea, and then read it again, highlighting or underlining the important information. Question 3. At the beginning of the year, a business had assets of $840,000 and liabilities of $485,000. During the year, the business had costs of $889,560, paid dividends of $110,000, and earned revenues of $1,114,230. In addition, during the year, assets increased by $89,200. What are total liabilities at the end of the year? Now, read it again and underline the information that's critical. Question 3. At the beginning of the year, the business had assets of $840,000, liabilities of $485,000. During the year, the business had costs of $889,560, paid dividends of $110,000, and earned revenues of $1,114,230. In addition, during the year, assets increased by $89,200. What are total liabilities at the end of the year? You'll notice that this question is very different from the previous two questions when information was given for just one period of time. In this question, they provided information for 3 different periods. They start with the beginning of the year, give us information for what happened during the year, and then ask us for an answer at the end of the year. So the equation we have right here, which is an equation that represents one period, won't work. We need 3 equations, one that represents each time period. Here are 3 equations representing 3 different points in time: beginning, during, and end. Notice some things. For the beginning of the period, I don't have anything under retained earnings or owner's capital. That's because there's no information in the question that gives me the details for things like profit, dividends, revenue, and expenses. Similarly, the question is only asking for total liabilities at the end of the year, so I don't have any details available for, again, revenue, expenses, profit, and dividends. As in the last video, note that the equations are mathematical equations, and as such, they always have to balance. First, let me expand the equations so I have more room to fill in the information. There. Now let's fill in what we know and then solve for what we don't know. I'll start at the top and move down. Beginning assets, $840,000. Beginning liabilities, $485,000. Now, during the year. Costs, which are expenses that have been used, consumed, or incurred in order to generate revenue, are $889,560. Dividends paid out to owners, $110,000. Revenues, which have been earned by providing a good or service, $1,114,230. Assets increased during the year by $89,200. Okay, now I have all my knowns filled in. I have to solve for my unknowns. Starting with beginning. Solving for equity, I know that it's equal to $355,000. How do I know this? Because the equation always has to work. The plus and the equal sign always hold true. All right, do I have any information about owner's capital or retained earnings? No, I don't. Remember that this does not mean that owner's capital and retained earnings are 0. It simply means that we don't have the details necessary to fill them in. Let's move on to during the year. Starting at the bottom of the equation, we know that revenue minus expenses is equal to profit, so we can solve for profit. Profit is $224,670. I can now calculate retained earnings, which is profit minus dividends. Retained earnings is $114,670. Now, can we calculate equity? Well, what about owner's capital? We weren't given any information in the question about owner's capital, which means that owner's capital didn't change during the year. So, the change in equity is equal to owner's capital plus retained earnings. Retained earnings is $114,670. That means equity is $114,670. Remember that what we've calculated here is what happened during the year, the change in equity. Opening equations at the beginning of the year are still $355,000. The amount for during, 114,670, tells us what the opening number changed by during the year. Now, we're back at the basic accounting equation. We can now solve for liabilities. Liabilities is negative 25,470. Does this make sense? Can liabilities decrease during the year? Of course. A decrease in liabilities during the year would indicate that you've paid down your debts sometime during the year. Can we now calculate ending balances? Absolutely. We now have an equation that moves from the top of the page to the bottom of the page. Working from the top to the bottom, we can calculate each of the individual elements. Assets from the beginning of the year plus assets during the year is equal to assets at the end of the year. Ending assets are 929,200. Beginning liabilities minus the decrease in liabilities during the year is equal to ending liabilities. Ending liabilities is 459,530. Finally, beginning equity plus the change in equity during the year is equal to equity at the end of the year. Ending equity is 469,670. Now, do we have any information about ending owner's capital or retained earnings? No. Again, this doesn't mean that these balances are zero. It only means that we were not given information about these balances, so we can't fill them in. Want to double check your number? Then check the addition for the ending equation. Liabilities of 459,530 plus equity of 469,670 is equal to assets of 929,200. Our equation works perfect. Our question was, what is ending liabilities? And the answer is 459,530. We have 2 more questions to go through, and I'll be doing that in my next video.